It's like me and you haven't talked.
Okay.
Hey, family, peace. I'm back. I told you I'll be back with this dear sister who is running for city council in the city of Sacramento. So y'all know how I do it. I talk about a little bit of everything. We should be concerned with a little bit of everything. So, dear sister, Tamika, give me your last name.
L'Ecluse.
L'Ecluse. I like the way you said it.
Yeah, practice.
So let me ask you this. What made you run for city council?
Ooh,
Wow.
There's a lot of things that made me run for city council. I mean, I could start back to November of 2016, which made me realize how much there is a need to be more civically involved and civically engaged. I have family. I have 2 small children that see what I'm doing and they feel inspired and they go and try to fight for what's right. I have a community of people who want to feel that they are being heard and being represented well. And quite honestly, I was asked to. So I said yes.
Okay, so what does it entail to be a city council? What is that job? Like, what does a city council person do?
Well, I think there's a lot of different layers. So if you're looking, you first have to look at the community aspect, right? We're broken up into districts. And so we are elected to represent a portion of Sacramento in our districts and hear our constituents' concerns and make sure they have the services that they need and make sure that we are available and that we're listening and that we are able to produce some results that benefit their quality of life and their sustainability. But then we also have to look at the big picture, and that's all of Sacramento, and that's working with the other council districts and the mayor to make sure that we are moving Sacramento forward in a way that, again, is stable, is smart, is innovative, is creative, but also protects our communities.
Okay. So what area are the seat that you're running for covers?
So District 5 covers Oak Park, where I live, Curtis Park, Southland Park, Manigan Park, North City Farms, South City Farms, Colonial Heights, Lawrence Park, Southland Park. There's a lot of neighborhoods. I keep a list to make sure that I'm really in Brentwood. I mean, we got a lot of neighborhoods.
Wow. So all the areas that you named for me, that's like old school. Like those people are pretty stable. We're talking about Southland Park. It's hard to buy out Southland Park because it stays in families, which is great. You know what I mean? Same thing with Curtis Park. I mean, Oak Park's been around for a long time. Like you're naming a lot of communities that have deep roots, if you will.
Yes.
How do you get them to trust you to vote for you?
Well, my hope is that my value of community and my deep roots. I mean, I was born here in Sacramento, born and raised. I was born on Mayfair Air Force Base and lived everywhere from Foothill Farms to now Oak Park and everywhere in between. So you used to hang out and get my hair done in Del Paso Heights over there, over by where across from the high school. And South Natomas, went to school out there before there was a high school, and we were bused out to Miraloma. But I had to live with families in other neighborhoods when my mom had a TDY in another country. So my roots are here in Sacramento, and I think that having such a diverse perspective of the different neighborhoods, because I lived in a whole lot of different ones, went to many different schools growing up, and my passion for people and to really connect with people is something that I'm hearing is received really well, and people can feel it. They can feel when you're genuine. They can feel and tell when you are there to really hear what they want to say and really want to connect. So I do have a way of connecting, and my roots are deep.
That's right.
And my family's roots are there. I mean, this is the neighborhood my kids are growing up in. And so what kind of community, what memories do I want them to have when they say, oh, back when I was growing up in Sacramento, what is that going to look like? And I think that one of the things we can do, it doesn't always mean running for office for me right now, it does, but I want to create those positive memories. I want to create those opportunities for my kids to say, wow, when I, grow up, I want to make sure that I come back and give back.
So one of the issues Sacramento is facing now is like a housing crisis. So I get a chance to work with a lot of moms and young people who are looking for affordable housing.
Yes.
Or our rents have just jumped up. I mean, I didn't even talk about the ownership part, but just in terms of people having a place to live. As a city council person, how would you address that or attempt to address that? Because I think it's not something that's going to be solved in 4 years. Or 2 years or whatever. I think that's a long-term issue, because we kind of seen this coming a little bit when new people start coming into the city, and it raises the prices up.
It's pretty sweet when you're coming from a place where a 1-bedroom, is the same here as a 4-bedroom.
Right.
I mean, Sacramento does look pretty attractive, and I'm still saving even if I do commute to the Bay Area. And so that is what we're seeing. I think there's a lot of different levels to affordability here in Sacramento. I think that looking at some of our policies, making sure that we are building enough affordable housing. I think that the Housing Trust Fund could be a little bit more aggressive so we can build some more new housing. But I think that's working. Again, we got to work with everybody. This is not a problem that Sacramento City could solve on its own. It's working with all the different council districts. I remember, like I said, South Natomas was where I grew up. My mom is still out there in Laurel Oaks Apartments. Back then, before there was a Walmart and a movie theater and a Target, we had a lot of apartments. Most of my friends lived in apartments. They were all low-income apartments. And so we have to also be careful not to concentrate poverty, because that's very obvious in some areas of Sacramento, Natomas being one of them, South Natomas. And so we have to look at where, the who, what, when, where, and why. And the who needs to be everybody. It needs to be at the city level, county level, housing advocates, people who are experts in housing and affordability and sustainability. And I don't think it's all going to come from just building housing. It's going to be changing how we do business, essentially, and making sure that we're protecting our people. Because really, if somebody can feel secure, if they know that they have a stable house, they know that they have a good job, if they feel secure, then they can go and invest. They can go to the restaurants. They can go to the Golden One Center. They can go to the movies. They can invest back into the community. And that's not a privilege for everyone right now.
So true. What about youth development? What could you do to address more youth empowerment? I think there's a lot of youth empowerment going on in Sacramento. That's just my personal opinion.
There is a lot of youth empowerment. But I think that also it's also trusting you to let them lead. Because yes, we have power, we empower them, right? We're going to open up this large room, and we're going to have this presentation for you, and we're going to talk about these things because this is what we did studies, and this is what you care about. And then we've picked some people to come and talk to you about this. Does that really feel like empowerment?
No, really.
And so I think that also our approach to youth empowerment is letting them lead, trusting them to lead, and giving them the tools that they need early. Back when I was a kid, when we were kids, Friday Night Live, right? We would go out there, there'd be Friday Night Live, all the folks who were leading it were youth. We'd go to the school, we'd have a big party, and we felt empowered. We felt that we were part of the process and part of the solution. And I think that's what youth need now. I think that their voices need to be lifted. I love what the city is doing right now with our youth as far as building the youth commission that focuses on parks and activities, and the mayor's work to his 1,000 strong, which is just going to continue to grow. Every new thing needs some time. But I think we're on the right track. I think that we need to build trust in youth. I also think that civic engagement is a huge part of it. So one of the groups that I walk for, volunteer with, they're out pre-registering. They go find those youth. Hey, do you know that if you're going to be 18 by November, you can pre-register now and you're going to be ready to vote, and educating them and making them part of the process. I love that there's a youth commission in Sacramento. I love that Sacramento City Unified School District has a youth representative, but we need to just not have them be at the table, but what are some ways that they can start pushing policies that affect them, and creating opportunities for the youth voice to be lifted, truly lifted.
How are you going to engage communities that are already here doing the work? Because it seems like there's a big disconnect from what the city and what the powers that be does or the system does, and people who have been in our community doing the work for years and can't get any support. I mean, that's very obvious. So last week I had here Sister Vina. She was awesome. I really enjoyed it. We talked for a while off camera, but she really talked about the importance of when you're trying to help the community, it's good to go into the community, see who has the pulse, who's talking to people, who knows what's really going on, who knows about what's happening with seniors, who's really know what's happening with young people. Because I find that young people, yes, they want to lead, but they don't want to lead and not know what they're doing. Because a lot of us had to lead and had to learn on the job.
What is that? But Ginger said you build the boat while you're sailing.
Right. So, do you have any plan to engage some of the community grassroots, or just nonprofit, or just people who?
Those are my people.
Yeah, okay.
Right. That is that. I mean, you and I connected, you know, through the Black Child Legacy campaign, and one of the things that I was almost overwhelmed with when I had started was the fact that I already had those connections with those groups, a lot of those groups. And then I was able to build more connections and get to know people more than just their name or their organization, but really, truly what they do. A lot of folks who are in this collaborative, in this building right now. But it's not, it's also giving them, it is collaboration. It has to be collaboration, but you first have to build trust. And I think that if we are going to move forward in real sustainable ways for our priority communities, for the people who are on the ground, the boots on the ground, then we have to be intentional, and we need to build trust first, because nothing comes out of just, you know, making an appointment and showing up one day and then not being there the next. You got to keep going. You got it. So that's.
Have you been a part of any of the women's groups? A couple of weeks ago, I was invited to, I guess, a discussion on the Department of Women and Girls Health, or Women and Girls Issues. Please don't kill me if you're watching, because I can't remember. I've been dealing with so much stuff in the last 24 hours. But in terms of just like, it's like the Department of Women
that
and Girls.
commission in San
the commission.
The
Thank
Commission
you.
of Women and Girls. Yes.
Right.
I did not go to that.
Okay, I didn't either because I was working.
I was
concerned. I did follow it.
I did follow it. Followed it. And I checked off who was there, so we know who you were. And thank you so much for speaking. You know, for being there and for speaking up. I'm a part of a lot of women groups. From the Sacramento Women's Advancement Coalition. I sit on the board of the Sacramento Women Democrats of the Women Democrats of Sacramento County. I'm part of BWAPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action. My goodness, there's a lot. There's a lot. But a new one started too last week. Maybe that's where I was. A new one started called Women Up, and so that is hopefully going to be a way to bring all of those different groups, because kind of like what we talked about earlier, everyone's working in these silos, and we might touch, we might overlap, we might all, you know, there might be one of us who goes to 3 or 4 of those meetings. But
a bunch of meetings, but
it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meetings.
Though,
but how do we build our network so that we're not overlapping, not overstepping, and not competing with each other? Because I don't want any of that either. We all have a goal, especially when it comes to gender and racial equity, to move forward. And so that's going to mean, again, got to build the trust and collaboration and networking. I get every business card I can. I find out and I write down how I know you, what are some things that stood out about our conversation or our interaction, even if it was just 20 seconds, because I want to build a connection with you. And I think that if we operated all of these organizations like that and supported one another coming up, and then we would all come up. But I think that it's not enough to just check a box and say, yes, I invited that person, or yes, I invited this group. You need to really engage and build that connection.
I agree.
You should know what my kids' names are. You should know, what my favorite color is. Because there are going to be other areas, maybe outside. And Sacramento is such a small place. It might be outside of this women's group that we come together on something else that's really important, that has nothing to do with the advancement of women, but maybe it's around resilient communities,
I get that.
So we got to really build connections.
Sister Rebecca in the room said,
hi, Rebecca.
She's saying, why didn't she not support the gas station in Curtis Park that was going to employ Oak Park residents with full benefits at $26 per hour?
I love that. It's not that I wasn't supporting the gas station.
Okay.
I was supporting the jobs. And I had written a letter saying, hey, these are the things we would love to see. We would love to see first source agreement hire. We want there to be a priority for Oak Park residents to be hired, but not just hired, because in the past, people have said, yes, we're going to hire you, but there's no retention security. So we need to not just hire folks, but we need to retain at least 80% of the folks that are hired, and whether it's working with them extra. I mean, until you're out of probation, you can lose that job the next day. They don't have to give you a reason, right? So we need to get people out of probation to be able to keep their union jobs. And quite honestly, it's up to the neighborhood also that is impacted by the actual infrastructure. Okay. And so if the neighborhood comes and says, look, like, we want this, we don't care, then great. That's what their decision, that's what they say. If they say, hey, we have some concerns, well, then let's talk about those concerns and let's see if there's a way to compromise. But I think they're still working on it. So my focus, though, are the jobs. I used to be a grocery employee. I worked in Albertsons over on Charleston. Remember Albertsons?
Yes.
588. And yeah, it was more money than I could have made it, as a 17-year-old. And there are protections once you're in a union. They do really go to bat for you, and as long as you do your part and be a good employee. And I think that as we move forward, I still want to see that MOU that says, yes, these jobs are going to these residents. I mean, I think that you also have to look at what the union rules are, because my understanding is that folks that are that maybe work at other Safeway stores should be also able to have that option of moving to a store that's closer to their house. So we have to make sure, I don't want to see broken promises. I want to see solid promises, contracts. I want to see letterheads. I want to see MOUs. I want to see signatures. I want to see notarized. That's what I want to see. I've yet to see it.
Brother David Deleuze, who I
interviewed earlier. David, how are you? I know I saw him earlier.
He said, are you sure about those unions? He put some questions, but he also said, what is your policy agenda, and how does it, make you different from the incumbent? Like, what's going to be different about you? Great question. Policy agenda.
Policy agenda.
Great question.
So affordability is one of my top priorities. Again, working with the housing advocates and looking at some of the ordinances and rules. I mean, we used to have an inclusionary housing ordinance that required construction of units, of a certain number of units. There was a percentage that needed to be affordable. That was taken away. That was changed into developers being able to choose to put money into a fund.
Wow.
And that fund is not growing as much as our need. So looking at some of our ordinances and policies is definitely on the top of my list. Our public safety, the trust between our public safety leaders and officials and servants in our communities needs to grow and be greater. I think that I would like to see us work more to create policies where our public safety law enforcement officials are more connected with the community. I would like to hopefully see just a change in the way that we police. And I think that our community members should be more empowered and more educated on how we can make some changes, make some social changes, so that we aren't relying so much on law enforcement for things that really they're not designed for. And then infrastructure. We have a transit system that's not necessarily, it's not serving all the needs of the community members, and it's not being utilized as much as it should be. As a kid, over in Natomas, I think it was the 88 and 87 on San Juan and Truxell, and we used to say, like, takes 2 buses and a train to get anywhere in Sacramento. That was 1997 and prior. It still takes 2 buses and a train, but now we also have discontinued stops. We have places where people don't have shelter out of the sun or out of the rain. We have places where people can't sit. We have stops that are so far apart and dangerous to cross, streets dangerous to cross to get to that stop. So I want to see more investment, and not necessarily financial investment. I think we need to look at where the money is going and see if there's a smarter way that we could be truly providing and valuing public transit for communities. And if we aren't making it easier and making it more reliable for folks in communities, then we're going backwards. We need to move forward. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, he's basically saying affordability and trust with law enforcement, which is a big one. Do you think part of that answer is having more police that look like the communities that they serve? Do you really think it's sensitivity training or cultural training? What do you think?
It's all of it. Let's just make a list. I mean, I think it's all of it. So it's not trust, but it's not just having representation matters a lot. I mean, right now, to be quite honest, there's in Sacramento, can you think of a Black woman elected official right now?
I cannot. Exactly. I'm not in Sacramento locally, no. Exactly. Yeah.
So representation does matter. But also not just representation, but where you come from and where your understanding is, right? So if a person is coming, right. So if a person is coming into a community but does not know or have experience or have knowledge or training on the trauma that has come through that community, then it doesn't, having them look like me only goes so far.
I agree.
They need to be truly understanding and connecting. Again, building those relationships and building that trust. I would also like to see, though, and I love the fact that Chief Hahn is our police chief, but I think that what makes him different is not just what he looks like, but the fact he's looking at bias. Like the first few months, I would go to all of his town halls because I wanted to hear what he had to say, and every time it came up, we have bias. We need more trainings in place that, yes, first of all, we need to acknowledge that, yes, we got bias. Whether it's, the person driving who's really slow, oh, they might be an old person. Then you look and you're like, yep, that's a bias. And so when we're looking at who's coming into our community, we need to also look at what biases they have and how can we help them to see there's another way and kind of take some of that bias out of their view of the community.
Is there any way we can take away some of those protections that protect people when they shouldn't be protected? And what I mean is that they had a woman last week or week before Vanessa was in the military and she did a really nasty video, she was released immediately. To me, that was like, wow, it was very racist. And they just like, this is a military service. You can't be protecting the service and you don't even like the people that you're with, that's going to be next to you in battle. You understand what I'm saying? I think sometimes I'm always amazed when I read people's comments and you go through Facebook and these people have these kind of expressions or feelings of people, and then you're supposed to call them for help. Like, it's like when you want to fall, I'm pretty sure they'll look at everything about you if they possibly can.
Oh yeah.
Why does that apply to right? So why does that not apply to people who are in positions where you are to protect and serve everyone, not just like protect and serve people who live in Appalachia? Like, you know what I mean? Like it has to be everybody, because that's what you sign on for. It's not just the president or just you know what I mean? How do we put some of that policy? We really get to see who people really are. And I mean, not just for police, the teachers. Mm-hmm. I see teachers who should not be teaching anyone's child. Like, they should just be like at the post office sorting mail.
Well, I think it's how we address some of the, so I was just at the Observer before coming here and looking at, on the front page about the student in Oak Grove. Mm-hmm. And the things that, the culture of the school. And we heard it last week, at the classroom. There's students who are saying, we went to the administration, we said something. So it's not that people aren't saying anything. It's like, what are the policies that you're going to follow through with, right? It's like an anti-bullying policy that the school would have. There's certain steps. Okay, if this happens, X, Y, and Z. If it continues, then we go a little bit further. If it continues, then we go a little bit further. I think that that needs to hold true also for people who are in leadership positions, or people who are public servants, or who are providing a service. And I think that having those policies, but also training goes a long way. And when you're coming from an environment of hate, and that's all you know, and then you just go through and you check the boxes and you take the tests and you get your credential and you go into a place of diversity, you're not being trained on to get you to that point of diversity. You are still stuck with that hate that you came with, and no one's calling you out on it. And so I think that also, though, when we're looking at policies, again, it has to come all the way down. It's not something just for the local, because the local police department, as well as the sheriffs, as well as the highway patrol, they're all under the state. There's an organization that says what police can and can't do, who says, and teachers and firefighters and nurses and doctors. There's an organization that says, like, hey, this is what it looks like. So if there are changes, I think more progressive changes that need to happen at all of those different levels, but it takes people getting in there to say, yes, it is time for a change. Otherwise, the cycle just keeps going and going. And it took a really long time, and I'm still working on it, to really have compassion for those I don't understand. And when I don't understand people who hate based on what you look like, or what you sound like, or what you can do with your body. And so I have a friend who continues to help me see this, and says, and then maybe that's an opportunity for me to say, what, I would like to hear what you have to say. How did you come to this? What are some of this? How did you get to the point of just looking at me and automatically not thinking that I'm worthy to be in your space? And having those conversations, and they're uncomfortable conversations, but I think more times than not, at the very end, at least you have a better understanding of each other. And I think that if we're going to move forward and again, like, start, building some of that trust, it's like, I think just educating ourselves and other folks and being able to forgive, and teach. I want to teach people. They're going to come and they're going to have a perception of me. The person thinks like, that I'm anti-gas station, anti-jobs. And I don't want anyone to be left with that perception, but let me have a chance to talk with you and kind of and find out what your position is, because that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward.
Sister Jill said, yes, the audio is choppy. I don't know what that is, you all. I've never had that problem before, but I'm working on something here in the audio. But she said, and I agree with Jill, she said you cannot, I don't think you can train into care with the responsibility if you don't care about it. I think that we have to be more invested and present and in the community block by block. Jill, I hope I said that correctly. What I was thinking is that it's like training someone to be a nurse and work with blood, and you absolutely hate blood, but you need a job. Like, it's kind of like, at some point it's like, this isn't a job for you.
Well, so here's the thing also with that is that who's reviewing when complaints come through? Is it internal? Is there another person able to say from an unconnected, neutral lens,
right,
who's able to say, yeah, that's not right. That person should not. How are we reviewing when issues do come up? Who's reviewing it, and who has the power to say what needs to be done afterwards? So, there's a reason why. There's a reason why some people keep saying that and keep it internal.
Yes, it's a culture that's been here for a minute.
Yep.
And the wrap-up question for you: why should we be supporting you for your city council seat? Why should anyone that's watching, or people who know someone who lives in those areas that you talked about, what district is that? District 5. District 5. Why should we be supporting you, live in your area? Why we should vote for you? Tell us why we should vote for you.
I want you to vote for me for a number of reasons. Not just my connection with my community, but my connection with all the different communities. I have been a teacher for most of my adult life, but I've also been a servant. And I believe that this is an office, this is a public servant's office. I'm not doing it for any sort of title. I'm not doing it for any special prize. My heart is with the people who I want to serve. And I want to educate, and I want to uplift, and I want to inspire communities to be resilient and to be stronger and to be able to grow and enjoy all of the beautiful things that Sacramento has to bring. Or has to offer. So I just want to invite you to talk with me. You can Facebook me. I'll give Mr. my contact information. You can email me. You can call me. You can stop by my house. Most people know where I live, but really, I want to represent our people. I want to represent our communities. I want to be a person who builds more bridges and really truly serves. I'm in this to serve. I'm in it 100%. So I'm not trying to have any side jobs or anything. Right. This is what I want to do. And this is the time I want to do it now. Like I said, representation matters. There are little girls out there. There are little boys out there. There are folks who are saying, who's up there speaking for me? Who's up there with my voice, with my experience, who understands? And I think it's time. We're in an interesting, from Washington, D.C. to Sacramento, very interesting times. And I think it's going to need some bold leadership, but I think it's going to need a different perspective for us to be able to move forward and to continue to grow as a family, a Sacramento family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms.
And talking with me. Yeah! I love it, y'all. Listen, I enjoy talking to this sister. Support her. Check her out. And let's make this happen. Now is the time. There's no time like the present. That's right.
Yeah.
See you later on this evening. We're talking with a youth, Sister Nicole from San Francisco. She's going to talk about what it's like to be young with dreams and plans and what support they need as young people. See you later on this evening. Peace.